Welcome to Mama Drama Trauma Academy, where we learn how to let go of the mother we want in order to accept the one we have. Mama Drama Trauma is the mother wound for empaths. Empaths don't just have the mother wound, empaths have Mama Drama Trauma because there is a very deep soul connection with our mothers. Everyone has a soul connection with their mothers. They are our primary soulmates during our lifetimes. But for empaths in particular, the soul connection is one having not to do with the attachment we associate with the mother-child bond. It is more about an old soul healing, relieving, releasing very deep soul bondage. This bondage is what we're talking about today. Specifically, how to use our psychic ability, regardless of what capacity that may be, to once and for all break free of the mother wound. In our third session in the series for the real ones, about the 3 mother wound empath types, where I've talked about the empath types before, and you can check out the YouTube video on that and the link in the description. This series has done more of a deep dive, although I consider these to be introductions to empath types.
With the exception of socio and psychopaths, all humans have variations of empathic abilities to tune into others' basic emotional feelings of fear, happiness, sadness, madness. The run-of-the-mill, feel the emotions of others. People come to you for support, highly intuitive, wanting to relieve the suffering of others. Of healthy empaths or empaths who feel the emotions of others with the ability to distinguish between others' emotions and their own. People coming to you for support as opposed to seeking the emotional codependent support of others, and being highly intuitive as opposed to having the intuition blocked by trauma and wishing you can relieve the others from suffering, just remaining a wish instead of a reality, is what mother wound empaths are. So we don't just have the mother wound, empaths have mama drama trauma. So welcome to Mama Drama Trauma Academy. We are here to let go of the mother we want in order to accept the one we have. And the mother we have is our intuition, great mother, the still small voice of the Holy Spirit, who is all about us being able to transcend the mother bond, the drama bondage, and the traumatic breakthrough that we need in order to be a healthy empath, to know the difference between our feelings and others, to be able to support others who come to us for help, as they often do, to have reliable intuition. No one's intuition is 100% reliable because we receive and we download what we emit. We are transmission signals, and we pick up on transmission towers that are of equal frequency to ours. And so when we're not well, we pick up energies that are not very well, not very good. And so we have a lot of problems with our psychic abilities. In this, our third and last of the 3 mother wound empath types for the real ones. And I wanted to let you know that even though we are mother wound empaths, we are real empaths. And on a very deep level, we are extremely real empaths, because the typical mother-child bond with all mammals even healthy empaths, is a bond of caregiving and of an attachment in order to establish a connection with the world. We come here as spiritual beings, as souls who are grounded, that root chakra, into the material world. And we've been talking about the chakras going up the Kundalini to where we are now with psychic empaths, the inner eye, the ajna. And so we started with the root chakra to sacral gut chakra with the instinctual empath, that maternal bond, that grounding. And on the spiritual level, looking at those lifetimes in which we have accumulated karma, or the backlog that we had, and encouraged us to initiate a greater connection with others beyond competition to cooperation, okay, in order to have more divine experience, more happiness, more wholeness, more health. Okay, we don't heal alone. We do heal together. We have to have one another, because ultimately, on a spiritual level, we are all connected. And so that intuitive, emotional empath, look at the heart and the throat chakra. We were talking about how we evolve from those experiences of just feeling to being able to tap into the feeling and the thought. Not so much I know what you're thinking, although we do as psychics, but on the emotional, intuitive level, the emotion, the feeling plus the thought is more about the thought form that is the foundation of the feeling. And that is in the session just prior to this. The mother wound intuitive empath goes into the emotional wheel and how that works with helping us to connect with others. And that can be a very frightful thing for mother wound empaths. And we have a lot of blockages around that. Talked about how we can work with those. And we have, throughout the series, discussed how we go up and down the Kundalini. We go up and down the Kundalini. In other words, these are the three types that we identify with according to our soul experience, and therefore our spiritual wisdom that we've gained through lifetimes. In other words, we earn the level of empathy we have. And so when we look at empathy, as we discussed, there are three ways that we develop empathy, as well as there being three ways in which we develop intuition. But when we talk about empathy, it's developed through internal guidance, such as through Great Mother, external mentorship, as in grandmothers or mothers or fathers, aunties, neighbors, who detect the ability that we have. And this is all inclusive, past lives, present lives, so we have angels, guides, and ancestors. They come through to us, don't they? And we have that sense of self-initiation as a third way, which we talked about in the first session of the series, the empath initiation we can do on our own, okay, in order to activate the internal guidance and the external mentorship that we can attract. So we're going to go into the three ways of developing the intuition, but I wanted to let you know the definition of a psychic empath.
There are three disclaimers. Number one, use self-awareness when determining how, when, and with whom you apply this information. It is your responsibility to use it according to what you know is true for you and about you. 2, if you are in any form of mental or emotional therapy or in a doctor's care, though imparted tips, tools, and techniques are proven as effective supplements to formal care, what is offered here is not intended to replace it. If you are at any time triggered Pause the session and resume once you've regulated. And 3, while Mama Drama Trauma Academy specifically speaks to empaths with the mother wound, absolute accuracy is not guaranteed, nor are results of healing sessions, information, communication, video content, consultations, and sessions with me, Tammy Taylor, or anything on the mamadramatrauma.info website. All content is created for educational, spiritual, and entertainment purposes only.
A psychic empath. What is psychic? It's the root word psyche, soul. Psyche means soul in Greek. And so a psychic empath has soul connection. Instinctive feelings, intuitive and emotional has the intuitive. And so when we talk about emotion, we're talking about how the ego communicates to the soul. It uploads this information. We've talked about this. Intuition is the information we download from the soul. And so intuitive empaths download information from their own soul. And so if the soul is receiving communication from another soul, through that soul giving permission or the need, we have medical intuitives that download information from their soul about what's going on with another person, okay? And we receive that information. It's a download, it's an intuitive download. Psychic empaths is soul communication. You can think of a psychic medium when it is actual real-time soul-to-soul communication with another soul. It's sentence by sentence, so to speak. Okay, it's about specific information that someone is being asked. It's not just a message about a general situation, be it a medical situation or something that you've developed a skill in as an animal intuitive or a plant intuitive or whatever type of intuitive that we may be. And again, we go up and down the Kundalini. Some of us may be very in touch with others' feelings, and we have a little bit of the intuitive. And so we can do a little bit of both. And we all have a little bit of the psychic. So if you have a little bit of the psychic, you're also getting information from the soul. You're getting information from other souls. And so that's soul-to-soul communication. So the feeling is knowing what the feeling is. The intuition is knowing why the feeling is. Okay, if I'm an empath, I can feel, if I'm a healthy empath, and I can distinguish that someone is sad. I can kind of refine that down to whether it is frustration based on the thought form if I'm an intuitive. It's not just being sad as an intuitive. There is a frustration here. There is a thought form of frustration here. And so why? Because the person is frustrated. The psychic will know exactly not only the reason, but what caused the frustration. The root cause of it from the soul. This person is frustrated because they were expecting a certain outcome from a situation that may not be apparent in our physical eyes, but because we're clairvoyant, we get an image of the frustration. I really wanted this person to come visit me today. I really wanted to see this person or this person to contact me. And so I am really sad. And it's not at you, Mother Wound Empath, but because you're doing your daily work and you're learning how to work your boundaries, you're getting more clear information. You're getting more balanced information. You can confirm that I'm sensing that you might be a little frustrated. Is that right? And of course, asking people who can tell us the truth, have enough self-awareness to know how they are feeling. Okay. A lot of people don't feel comfortable with other people knowing how they feel. Okay. But since we can feel all these things, instead of having our empathy work against us, these are the ways we can have it work for us. We can sense when someone doesn't want to do that. We don't want to push, even though that might be someone we really want to have this conversation with. We can't make them. And so we want to be more and more and more lovingly detached from people and from what we would demand from people had we are dithers about it, and really living in the reality of the world, because we have a lot of blessings when we do that. One of the main blessings that we have is that soul connection as psychic empaths. I want you to also understand, as we discuss psychic empaths, is that we have a particular worldview. The language and the words that we choose and that we use to describe how we feel when we're in conversation with people, sometimes it can throw people off because they mean particular things. And words are very important to us, which is why the mantra is extremely important. It holds a particular frequency. All mantras do hold a frequency, and we align with the power of what emanates from our body, as well as what we put into our bodies. And so we're very clear about that as psychic empaths. So this is how we balance our emotions, from what we eat to what we speak to what we allow in our physical, external, as well as internal bodies. This is the balance and the confirmation, again, asking others, but also confirming firstly and foremost within ourselves. So our worldview, even the term world, we associate with the mind, the world we live in. It's a mind job. It's whatever you think the world is what the world is. That's very different than the planets. Planet Earth. That is a cosmic or a universal conception. When we're speaking about the Earth, we're talking about more of a universal perspective. Some people can interchange them, but it's basically the known world is Earth. Okay, when we speak about the known world. And when we talk about planets, of course, we're talking cosmically, because planets are in our birth chart. And so there are different frequencies that these words hold, for example. And so we are soul connectors. We are cosmic, universal, and worldly beings. And today, with this introduction to psychic empaths, we want to leave with an understanding of the importance of ego-soul alignment. We talk about that a lot, but it's important because the psychic part of us, no matter what capacity we have it, is healthy only when we are able to manage the internal relationship between our ego and soul. We went into this with chakra boom as it relates to our health. The chakras being the interlinking wheel between our inner body and our soul. The physical ailment that we have, the sore hip or painful back, is the result of in the back not having the support we need or that we feel we need, and the hip not knowing how to move forward. Okay, so these are very ancient understandings. If you don't already have Louise Hay's book, How to Heal Your Body, that lists basic human ailments to begin understanding these correlations, I suggest that you get that, particularly if you are a healer. So in this session, understanding the importance of ego-soul alignment and how to do that as a highly sensitive person, the highest of the sensitive people, an empath. Again, that acronym DOES, through ego-soul alignment, aligning our emotions with our soul information. We're both human and divine. We are in the material realm, but we have a lot of astral energy, lots and lots of astral energy that comes through with our angels, guides, and ancestors, as well as our many lifetimes. You know, psychic empaths, as soul connectors, do not just reincarnate here on planet Earth. We have incarnated in many other galaxies and many other planets, and we have a lot of experience that we bring with us from the astral plane. So in these universes, there is beauty that's created just by our thought form. And so when we come back to the material world, we either come back here because we have a deep attachment, which is where we find mama drama trauma in the latter stages of older souls, because we're attached in an unhealthy way to another soul. There's just a toxic attachment. There's no other way to put it. We haven't let go. And we let go of everything to return to our own sense of divinity, our own sense of loving detachment and connection to Great Mother, Father, God. And we do this in order for us to renew and replenish our experiences, just like anything else. You know, you have a crazy wild night out drinking with your friends, epic. Remember it for the rest of your life. It was just, like they say, litty. You know, it just everything was going on. Everybody was there, this, that, and the third. But at some point, that experience needs to be processed and let go, or we'll just keep on trying to create it. And the energy that we're using to do that could be used to be good parents, good partners, good members of society, okay? To go on to other joyful, rewarding experiences of our divinity and our birthright to be happy, healthy, and whole. We have a smorgasbord, an infinite smorgasbord of experiences to choose from. And so as psychic empaths, we are very much aware of this, and that's why we can read situations, because there isn't anything new under the sun. And when we come back into the material world, we come back because we have desired to get back into that litty party situation, that high drama with that particular soul, in this case, our mothers. And it's not turned out too good, because we are at a maturity level where it's no longer beneficial for us to do that. Just like at the instinctual level of the empath, it's no longer beneficial to just be on a survival competitive mode. It gets to a point where you realize you have accumulated karma doing that. And karma is simply Sanskrit, most ancient language in the world, Sanskrit, for saying, well, Tamil is actually more ancient than, but anyway. And it starts to make you sick, not healthy. It starts to make you sad, not happy. It starts to break you. You get broken spirit, and unhappy, which many younger souls are, because we just have lost the plot. When we come here, especially early, we haven't had enough experiences to already know that we are divine. We're trying to prove it through the material experience, which is the divine order of things. That's why there's no judgment or condemnation, but there are consequences. And so the consequence of remaining in that is that you don't develop empathy if you don't switch from competition to cooperation. And although the transition is a challenging one, as we're seeing occur in the world of the human mind today, it's quite evident it's a difficult transition to make from competition to cooperation. But we're seeing it being done incrementally. And when we see it done in small communities, and examples of environmental activism, and examples of creative farming, and examples of cooperative communities, we see, wow, look at all this energy that's being invested in this cooperative way of living, this empathic way to exist. And so then we evolve and we evolve and we evolve. And so as psychic empaths, we have soul connection through many lifetimes with many, many souls. We have many, many skulls in the ground in which we've had these experiences, and that we interact with in this lifetime, and resolving all of this karma we've accumulated. So not every psychic is practicing as a psychic medium, because that's not all of our jobs. But it's a very good example, since it's such a visible one, for us to see how we connect with the material and non-material realms very effectively through of experience that we have in both the material and non-material worlds. So I want to let you know that as we go into the characteristics that psychics have, there are also 3 ways, just as they are to develop empathy, as there are to develop psychic abilities. So, of course, I just described being naturally born with it from these lifetimes. Okay. But it can also happen within the course of a material lifetime as an onset of maturation. So the maturation doesn't have to occur outside of material existence. It can happen within a lifetime. There's just an onset of maturation, of psychic maturation. You came into this life, you're just living your life. You're not thinking about being an empath. You're not thinking about being a psychic or any of that. But your life is such that you are making those connections with souls from past lives. Your life is such that you are doing your inner work to heal. Your life is such that you are consciously or unconsciously resolving karma with people, being more cooperative as opposed to competitive. And there is an onset of maturation that hastens you to psychic experience and phenomena. It can also happen, this maturation can occur through accidents, commonly through lightning strikes. People that survive lightning strikes predominantly, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's over 50%, have an onset of some psychic ability or some sensory capacity that they didn't have before. They might lose their sight, but all of a sudden they're a concert pianist. They might all of a sudden speak 3 languages or have a different accent than they were born with. Tapping into those past soul lives that they've had and it beginning to be expressed as a part of them in their present life. And this opening the doorway to those psychic abilities. There can be emotional trauma, such as MDT, okay, is a prominent example of what brings on this onset of maturation through conscious choice. Okay, it's not an accident. It's a soul contract to evolve in self-love and spiritual independence. And again, working that soul contract, whether we're aware of it or not, that maturation onset occurs. And this is why, because it's triggered by grief, which is the 3rd way that psychic abilities are developed. When we are truthful with ourselves, when we have the mental virtue, we're working with the inner eye and the crown chakra, that sun and that moon ruled space in our auric field. When we are truthful with ourselves from our throat chakra, that opens up our crown chakra and it heals our auric field. It's triggered by grief, which is letting go. And again, when we let go of toxic emotions, toxic experiences, toxic thought forms, we make space for divinity. We make space for the energy required to experience the health, happiness, and wholeness that we need. So up and down the Kundalini, from the crown chakra where our psychic abilities are and where our clairs are located, down to the root chakra, it's like a dimmer switch. It's all love. Nothing is done to us, but for us. We know, as we learned in our session on angel communication, that there are 8 clairs, and of those, we talked about in angel communication, clairaudience, the extrasensory ability to hear things. We talked about clairsentience, that extrasensory ability to sense and to feel things in the gut. And we talked about clairvoyance, that extrasensory sight. Those are the 3 primary ways that our angels, guides, and ancestors communicate with us. Those are the 2-way lines. And so a lot of times when we're talking about 2-way empathic soul communication, of course, our angels are concerned with our souls, not our egos, as well as our guides and ancestors. That's a 2-way communication that is set up through those clear channels. The other 5 channels are based on our senses. And so we have the extrasensory smell. We have the extrasensory, of course, sight with the clairvoyance, but we have the extrasensory taste. We have the extrasensory, all of these clairs that are primary part of the psychic field. And so the psychic field is going to tap into that, the base of the clair empathy is really what I'm looking for here. The basis of the clair empathy is that psychic capacity that all of us have. Okay, every empath has clear empathy, and it's just an empath. It's just someone who's physically in tune with the emotional experience of a person, place, or animal. It's a type of telepathy, okay, to sense and feel within oneself the attitude, emotion, or ailment of another person or entity. Okay, and so we're talking material and non-material beings. And so if you have MDT, these things can be scary because mama was scary, and so we ain't gonna be inviting nothing else scary. All right, and so that's why we work on our healing, so that we can let in what is good for us, to tune into the vibrations and the tone of the auras, so that we can self-protect, so that we can self-provide, so that we can be present for ourselves instead of having to rely on others and remain in the bondage of codependence. So you see, all of this works together. And I was really reaching for that co-empathy because it's so important to just establish where this cross-pollination happens. But clairtangency, clear touching, that's really something from a psychic. We've seen, I know the Hollywood psychic medium, I forget his name, but he does that touching with the writing. He's touching people's objects and that sort of thing to get, it's more of like a psychometry that he's doing, to handling the object or touching the area to perceive through the palms of someone's hands. They're touching of something, information about the article or its owner. And so that is a psychic clair. The other psychic claircognizance, that clear sense of knowing, that psychic insight is just a clear sense of knowing. And all of us have that. And the psychic is unique because it's not clairsentience on the clear feeling, it's knowing. There's no going back and forth questioning. It's knowing. Okay, that's psychic. So if you have that, that's a level of psychic ability you have. Now, getting back to those five senses, clairsalience is the word for smelling. Clairsentient is the word for, that clear sensing. Clairvoyance is primarily psychic in terms of the actual imagery and actually seeing things, psychic ability, but it's also one of the five senses of perceiving through sight. Clairgustance, the tasting or discerning, what we were talking about before, and of course clairaudience, the hearing. So these clairs, in French, clair means clear. Again, getting that clarity is always very, very important, because we're talking about psychics being able to download a feeling or a thought from the soul realm. And so getting into this telling the truth, this mental virtue, the self-awareness of the objective reality and past lives, this goes into the worldview, okay? And so this whole idea that there are distinctions to be made between the cosmic mind, the universe, the planet, the known, the material, and the immaterial worlds, because of the internal being represented by the cosmic reflection of the cosmos within through our birth charts, and the external worldly experience of the actual soul through the Kundalini, through its sensory experience in the physical world, which we talked about in Chakra Boom, that session about those physical ailments coming from our emotions or the pain body. Now, as old souls, there are three things that we know. And you can think of psychic empaths as souls that know this beyond having to be convinced of it, beyond whatever. This is just what they know. They know how to survive. Therefore, secondly, that we are eternal beings that will survive. So they know that we're eternal beings that survive. That's pretty much the same thing, right? We eternally survive. And therefore, we know how to survive. The third thing is that, therefore, material lifetimes are less about material attachment and more about spiritual evolution. In other words, life is about empowering our inner worlds, our spiritual minds, to heal ourselves and others. When we heal as mother wound empaths, we heal MDT psychics, individuals whose psychic abilities have just lain dormant, because we now have the capacity to actually feel how they're feeling. They can't articulate it. They don't know anything but pain. But we know that there are levels to it. And we can engage the kind of conversations, the kind of interactions that release them from that toxic bond, that assist them in making their own decisions and choices about how, when, and why they would or would not want to do it. Hey, there's no timeline on any of this. We have true divine free will. And so it's not about a campaign or a ministry that is about everybody needs to do this now. No, it's about being ready, able, and willing to do our part if we are so called to do it, because we're already happy, healthy, and whole. We already are living in love and detachment. We already are doing our own internal healing work. A psychic empaths know this is something else that they know. And it's kind of building on this survival as a part of knowing that we're eternal beings, that we survive, and that we are here not to attach. And that's why in the healing of mama drama trauma, the steps are separation, transformation, and integration. Once we're healed, we can go back into the toxic environment. But until we do, we need time and space to heal. Okay? And so that separation, getting at the root of the illness, is really what clues us into the karma. Okay, so the amount of active energy that's stored in our primary chakras. And that's what working with the oracle helps us do. It helps us key into, where is the blockage for me? Am I primarily having it in my second chakra, self-inquiry, where I really haven't delved deeply enough within myself to inquire as to what is going on? The typical issues that we experience in that suit. What is it that I need to focus on from this lunar cycle of healing, of download from Great Mother, the balsamic self-inquiry, to the planting new moon card of, what's the new moon card in the self-inquiry suit? Hatar, happiness, pleasure principle, that's a download with the sacral, the desire, and the planting having to do with Sedna energy. Am I going to plant victim or victor? Decision, Rhiannon. Am I going to trust myself, or I'm going to believe what other people believe beyond me? Waxing moon card, Ishel. Am I going to go into self-healing mode, or am I going to let somebody else tell me what I need to heal? Whatever I decide, it's not about shame, blame, and guilt. It's about self-inquiry. It's about self-curiosity. What am I doing, and why am I doing it? So the universe, the cosmos, my birth chart that has Saturn moon, doesn't constantly have to trigger me into asking the question. Let me just go ahead and ask it so I can get the message. Process it, which is the next suit. Have integrity about it, tell myself the truth, the next suit. Resurrect in a new way of approaching this so that I can emancipate myself. That's the aspiration. And the 6 suits of Aspire that align with that healing process for us that Great Mother downloaded through the Oracle deck. It's not about overthinking. It's about being able to look at these blockages that we have, this pending unprocessed karma in the chakras, because the impact that they have on the way we feel and the way we act in our daily lives, that is what causes us to overthink. That is what causes us to crisscross our heart chakra. The first 2 sessions of this series were heart chakra cards Great Mother came through from, because that's the crossroads between the ego and the soul, the upper and the lower chakras, the heart chakra. And this blockage in the heart is what makes us delusional, suicidal, and self-sabotaging. So we don't want to be in this overthinking mode as a result of this blockage that runs this loop of, if I coulda, woulda, shoulda, shame, blame, and guilt. Okay, because this is about living with integrity, the mental virtue to do the constant clarity, balance, and confirmation work that we are here to do. And we're here to do it because we've already had lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes as doctors, as priests, as shaman. You know, doctors through accident or emotional trauma, triggered by grief, right? All healers or wounded healers. We've done this. This is what we do. We've been priests. That onset at maturation, as a result of grief, as a result of some accident, as a result of some unexpected stressor in our lives, being called to ministry, going to jail, and all of a sudden having, the jailhouse revelation, they call it. Being called into ministry, being called into the alignment. We have been priest. We've been shaman, natural born old souls, experienced doctors and healers, because we have been shamans to ourselves first. Shamans speak to the soul, our own souls first. And the shamanic tradition is a very ancient tradition that I had the opportunity to learn a great deal about living and working in Africa and Latin America and working with the medicines. And this tradition of psychic mediums and elders that have this ability, they call into ministry, quote unquote, young souls from 7 and 13 years old. They can identify them usually at birth, but they wait until they're weaned from their mother's breast to take them out into the wilderness. And we've all already done that. Shamanism relates to the spiritual identity of things, objects. Again, that reading, being able to read from objects, plants, animals, places, communicating with them in a state of trance. We live in our own world between worlds in order to download clear, balanced, and confirmed information that we and the world needs to heal. We can't heal by the mind, by the world. The world mind is not designed for that. It is designed to put a monkey wrench in the divine. It's designed for that so that we learn how to work it. How else are we going to evolve into guides? How else are we going to evolve into ancestors that are worth anything to our descendants? We have to learn how to get up under that car and work it and fix the motor before we can guide them when they need a car and it's broke down on the road and this and that and the other. Just giving them that little, hey, why don't you get the wrench in, the glove compartment? And you see that little nut that's sticking out? Just go ahead and tighten that up. How else are we going to know how to do that? We've had to do it ourselves. That's how it works. Everything is earned. And so this trance, again, can scare people because this isn't what we've been taught in the world religions. It never has been since these ancient times. But typically, we would live in the wilderness, on the outskirts of communities, because we needed this time in space as empaths. We needed to be able to stay in this altered state of mind. Today, we stay in a drug-induced, delusional state of mind, not knowing that our urge to do so is really because we need not to escape from the world mind. But when we're not taught, when we are brought up through world religions that do not teach us how to access this soul space, it's about us integrating the spiritual world into our material experience, because we are both. But we have to learn that. In the past, of course, we learned it from these elders in the wilderness through rites of passage that encompassed separation from the mother, from the tribe. Had to go out into the wilderness. Had to dig your own grave and stay in it for 3 days. Transformation. Coming out of there a different person if you survive. And if you didn't survive, that was really sad, because you had the capacity to overcome the world mind that said that you couldn't, but you didn't. And so these things were done away with in a culture that couldn't appreciate what it was about. We need people who can overcome the world mind to truly heal those of us who are in bondage to the world. And so that's why we have the challenges that we have today, because this altered state of mind that is self-initiated is experienced by things that we call cruel today, not understanding that things that induce that type of altered state of mind, aside from drugs, is starvation. You know, you dug a grave being for 3 days, you're not eating. Physical exertion, very physically exerting to keep that sand out of your nose. Psychoactive substances accompanied by drumming, chanting, and dancing. These plant psychoactive substances, very carefully curated for the purpose of the initiation rites. If the initiation rites was for the person to be a healer of the herbs, it was a different initiation rite than someone who's going to be a healer of the animals or of the people. A healer of the plants and of the agriculture was something completely different. So the psychoactive substances used for that particular initiation to alter the state of mind was an altering of the mind to align with the frequencies and the chanting of the mantras of that particular frequency to induce that ego to align with the soul that needed to heal the people whenever there was some type of disease or something that came about that they needed to heal from through the herbs, or there was some type of a attack on the agriculture from insects or whatever that would need to be remedied. So these realms that the psychic empath traverses, this public realm of service, this secret realm of mental, emotional secrecy, this private realm of worship and daily practice, to balance the outer, the inner, that medial realm, the ego and the soul. It's a lot of work, and people don't really recognize it because they have no idea all of this is going on with us. They just think that, we're weird, we're crazy, or whatever, especially if we're not doing our inner work. Because all of these messages and things coming to us, it is going to drive you crazy if you don't have a practice. And so that is the mandate. We have to have some type of sadhana. There's a Sanskrit term that refers to a daily practice. Sadhana is this disciplined surrendering of the ego in which the practitioner uses tools. Whether you're using the Mama Drama Trauma Healing Oracle deck or asana, or pranayama, meditation, or chanting, whatever you're doing, prayer, scripture, if you're sincere in your spiritual journey, your whole life will eventually reflect your sadhana. If you are sincere. And insincerity has its price. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Because anybody who is stepping into these waters that is insincere and has a malintent is really asking for a highly karmic experience. MDT is a walk in the park compared to what those type of frequencies bring, because the daily practice develops our ability to be tuned into the validity and the utility of our own ideas. And so this is where the evolution is happening, the self-initiation. We change our minds and our concepts based on our experiences, and therefore our emotions, those thought forms are shifting about them as we purge what is no longer supporting or serving our divinity. And we do that without abandon, because we don't have judgment or condemnation. The more that we practice the mantra, we don't have it. And I've noticed how it has really helped me with my health. In the recent YouTube video where I'm talking about the importance in knowing the difference between attacking and inviting inner work, a lot of times we will attack our inner work with such self-judgment and condemnation. We don't want to do it because we're not living up to some kind of external standard that we have set for ourselves, some impossible touchstone that we have to achieve to be worth anything to ourselves. Or we are affirming one that our mother established. And that's why we have to separate. We have to let go. It's not out of being judgmental or mean or anything like that. It's from discernment. It's from discerning, this is not making me healthy. I have a right to be happy. I have a right to be healthy. I have a right to be whole. I have a right to establish my own standards for my life, and knowing that as a divine child. And so when we talk about the importance of ego-soul alignment, we're talking about this vibrational autonomy that we create through our daily practice. Like I said, Great Mother speaks to us individually and uniquely through the Great Mother Speaks Oracle deck. It's all about how we scale the depths of our emotions for precise intuitive alignment. And psychic empaths do this kind of conscious Kundalini activation from the instinctual, intuitive pathways through their inner work. And it stimulates a type of external interaction and communication that utilizes their gifting. And so there's nothing to think about. There's nothing to overthink. It's just a response to an environment that we've created based on doing our inner work. We've created an environment that attracts to us the souls that want to communicate with us and that we need to communicate with in order to be healed and to heal. It's a lot of work. It is not for the weary. We realize that we are world weary, that we're insatiable, inferior. We have an ephemeral longing and fatalistic, realistic approach to life. And it's exhausting. We need a lot of rest. And this energetic backlog from our worldview is something that we are addressing from a soul level. So it's not like we're trying to clock and tick off a to-do list within this lifetime. We have learned never to trust anything without testing it. And so as a result, we have to test everything. And that takes time. We have to test ourselves, the new realizations we come to, the new evolutionary experiences we have with people. You know, like in losing weight and becoming more healthy, working with the divinity identity mantra and just doing me without judgment or condemnation, it has mattered less and less what I eat. And I'm maintaining my weight. I've never done this since I've been born. I've been chubby since I've been born, and I am in menopause. Why? Because the toxic load of all of that shame, blame, and guilt is being released. That's what the weight is. Just like they talk about, when we have emotional, physical, sexual abuse, we hold on to that shame, blame, and guilt as a protection. And that's the weight. It's the same thing. The physical body, the chakras are just like the computer, the memory storage apps in the computer. And they have different functions. It doesn't know the difference between one file and another. It doesn't distinguish, this is a good file, or this is a bad file, unless it is toxic. And we have a lot of toxic files. And so they're identified, but we're not deleting them quick enough. We're not letting go of them quick enough. And when we do, in doing our inner work, because of the conditioned mind, it takes time for us to do that with our incoming data. And so oftentimes it's not an immediate piece of information that corrupts our system. It's over a period of time downloading a particular program or a particular app that has a dysfunction. And we're not distinguishing between it. The only distinction being made is the file size. And so if we keep on having small doses of shame Every time I see those Doritos, every time I even look at this in the aisle, these small little, so many bites of information going in of shame, blame, and guilt, over time, it will create the same kind of toxicity that's not as obvious as the traumatic event. And that's where it becomes the complex trauma. And so you see how this prevents the effective working of our psychic realm and makes us very world weary. But the wisdom that we have from our experiences is what heals. And the wisdom from practicing the divinity identity mantra, not allowing that shame, blame, and guilt to remain my default program, but transforming it, having separated and now transforming it, not storing or holding the toxicity, into self-care, self-protection, self-presence. I'm being present with myself. I'm feeling ungrounded in this world right now. And so, yes, I'm craving a lot of salt. So, yeah, that salt tastes good to me. Everyone has their own path. Everyone has their own unique way that they need to go. That could be something completely fatal to somebody else, which is why we have to have our own relationship with Great Mother. We always want to recognize that there's a continuum between that blockage and just kind of vague downloads. We want to distinguish between downloads that we're receptive to and those that we're not, those that we yield to, those that we resonate with, and those that we don't, without the negative self-talk that we discussed in that series that you can check out in the links below, that have to do with that rage, worry, and the choices that we make without power. So we need our power to be clear, balanced, and confirmed, because there's no free will without knowing what free will is. And free will is the truth. It's love. It's knowing what a lie is, what's good for us, what's toxic for us. That's free will. That's free will. Free will is not just, I'm going to do what I want to do. No, me just doing what I want to do, getting a bag of Doritos and still holding shame, blame, and guilt. That's really kind of operating from the default of shame, blame, and guilt. Because I'm still going to feel bad about it, but I'm doing what I want. You see, that vibration of anger, frustration, is not the health, happiness, and wholeness of divinity. Now, this is not toxic positivity. This is about free will. I'm going to do this not because I'm telling myself this story about I need salt, but because I know that this may not be the best for me at this stage, especially in my life. But because I am choosing, I'm using my will to choose to be kind to myself in this moment of stress. I'm just choosing to be kind to myself. I deserve kindness, and I'm going to be kind to myself. I also realize there are consequences for my behavior. So I'm going to drink some apple cider vinegar water beforehand to reduce the insulin rush. And I'm going to do a couple laps in the pool. I'm going to do the best I can. That's free will. That's free will. I'm going to do the best I can in the circumstances, because we always want to realize that we do not know whether we are working from a default or our free will when we are being condescending or we're compromising ourselves. We're not being true to ourselves. We'll never know. But if I know the truth is, this is not the best thing to eat. This has consequences. And so I'm going to do my best to abate these consequences while I'm lovingly doing all of it. I'm going to do all of it lovingly. I'm going to do all of it lovingly. And I'm telling you, it has made a huge difference in my health. Even the way my body is reacting to it is not as these colors and stuff and these foods and stuff and all this stuff toxic. We are highly sensitive. And I used to feel it in my joints really strongly and that sort of thing. No. When we align with the divinity identity mantra, our angels, guides, and ancestors, we can hear them more clearly. And so I'm drinking a little bit more water. There are some other supplements that came to me that I needed to take that is not operating like a menopause body. I'm operating like another body. This is what psychic empaths do. We validate for clarity, balance, and confirmation of our soul connection. And we do it in 3 ways. By distinguishing our intuition from the messages we receive and whom it's intended. So we validate with this distinction in our intuition, first and foremost. And so that means that in the message protocol, we download, validate, and then we deliver. So I'm downloading things that I need to do to take care of myself. But in the process, I'm also downloading information clairvoyantly about an associate that is also having health issues. And see, this is what I was talking about, the channels of communication. What we focus on is what we see, feel, perceive in any of our clairs. And that's why a lot of times we'll say, well, you're clairvoyant or you're a psychic. Why come you didn't know that? We're not tuned into that. And especially with a lot of world events, we're not tuned into it unless somebody is asking us to do it. And the psychics that do that, you're going to have to pay them because that is taking a lot of energy. Again, those dark energies are very costly, physically and non-physically. They're very expensive. They take a toll because that's not what we're here for. But getting back to my example, at the same time, since I'm channeled into the health channel, again, that health mantra from the shamanic example, that initiation for, the agricultural shaman. Okay. Tuning into that frequency. Well, I got the information I needed for myself for the supplements, but I also tuned into an associate that I hadn't seen in a while that had been in an accident. Next couple of days, I heard that they had been in an accident. And although when I downloaded the information, I knew that something had occurred to the person because I didn't tune into it to know exactly what it was. I was dealing with my own stuff, the Doritos and everything. I didn't get specific. But the next couple of days, I found out that she had actually had a very horrible accident on her bicycle on the street. And so that was the download. Validation came the next couple of days that something happened to her and the delivery of the message. And so we get back to how, when, and why are we delivering it? Because as psychic empaths, remember, we know the root of it. Just because we know doesn't mean other people want to hear. All right? When I go to visit her and see how she is, I don't need to say, I knew this happened to you and this, that, and the other. If she's like that, for example, and she's interested in that, she would love to hear that. But more than likely, if I'm really close to the person, I would have called and I would have found out. So it really just depends on the situation, how you deliver it. And again, using our empathic abilities emotionally and intuitively to discern that, asking questions all along the way. Hey, do you want to hear what happened to me a couple of days ago when I was thinking about you? Anything. If you really, really feel the unction to share. And if you don't, not sharing, because that validation process of download, validation, delivery is a cycle. It will cycle again and you can make another decision. So we don't want to be forceful in something that we really don't feel. And so that's why we look at that refinement in the emotional wheel so that we're in touch with how we're feeling and distinguishing it between us and others. I could go on and on and on about this today, but there will be other sessions about the 3 mother wound empath types. This series has been an introduction. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as promised, the message from Great Mother in response to our question about how do we manage the psychic overload? And again, that psychic overload comes from unprocessed intuition, things just building up that we have not done the work of validating or delivering, or we have not done the work of detoxing ourselves enough for the clarity, balance, and confirmation we need. How do we begin that process, Great Mother, so that we can stay on the path of clear, balance, and confirmed psychic information? How do we manage psychic overload? Empaths have greater power to control emotions than younger souls, but with mama drama trauma, it is obstructed because instead of observing, we absorb others' feelings as if they are our own. This is how we survived maternal rejection and neglect, by using our empathy to relieve mama's anxiety enough to minimally provide for, protect, and be present for us. With a healthy maternal relationship, it would have been reversed, allowing us to explore and develop our innate powers of observation and abilities to self care, self protect, and be emotionally, mentally, and spiritually present. Great Mother downloaded the Mama Drama Trauma Healing Oracle deck for those of us with the mother wound as a self loving way to reclaim these abilities by empowering empathy to serve our highest good and live our divinity identity. Get yours today at mamadramatrauma.info.
As promised, here is our reading from Great Mother today. Her message in response to our question about how do we, as psychic empaths, with our psychic abilities, manage the overload? How do we manage the overwhelm of information that we receive as we are healing, as we are processing the toxicity of MDT? And you know what came back to me was go back to the original deck. There is a initial version of the deck that is Hindu oriented. It has the chakra symbols inside of each lunar phase. And the font is a little bit more ancient and Sanskrit. And so I'm going to show the card here on the audio screen so you can see it. Many of you do have it, and I'm so grateful for those of you who've been with me from the very beginning. We don't show this deck very often anymore in the public teachings, but it really made me feel a certain kind of way. The card we have is Sedna, the victim card. And in this version, it is the victim. It is the sacral orange card. It's a beautiful Hindu symbol of the sacral and the crescent moon phase, the planting moon phase. We went over this very soon in this session, talking about self inquiry. The Essen Aspire is the second suit, and this is the second chakra. And it made me feel there's the difference between the cards besides the graphic is the word at the bottom, the phrase at the bottom that describes the card. This says the victim. The updated version says victim or victor. And so this lets me know Great Mother wanted us to focus on the victim energy with this in relation to her response, relationship to her response about managing this bombardment. We've been talking about the maternal bond, the bondage, and being bound by this toxicity, and the healing being a process of release, of letting go. In this phase of the deck, the letting go process is in the stage of planting a new seed for a new cycle of thought, that mind renewal. And when we talk about a psychic empath going through a rites of passage continually with that inner work, that separation from that toxicity, that shame, blame, and guilt, that transformation through the integrity and the resurrection of the new, refined, cleansed self to yet again integrate the emancipation. Great Mother's taking us back to the seed, the planting of that victim in the sacral chakra that so many times those of us with the mother wound unconsciously plant with the presumption that we have a life sentence of MDT. And that's why the original deck just simply said the victim, because we had to really work with that before we could jump into victor energy. So, old souls maturing from survival to this subtle sensitivity is not to be confused with always low self esteem, you know, or that we're non thinking, non analytical, metaphysical believers and the woo woo. But maturing souls who have access to an abstract world, just as Setna did in her goddess journey to overcome really daddy drama trauma with her father not being able to let her go and live the life that she wanted to live with her lover, with her husband, and coming to bring her home across the waters in his canoe, and her wanting to jump out, her jumping out to return to her lover, her love, her desire, her evolution, what she was trying to plant, her new life, going to her new life with her new husband, that pull, constantly being pulled back. Great Mother is saying to us not to allow what other people think, their perceptions of who we are, what we're experiencing, what we're about, woo woo or whatever, to dictate what we know, because that's what it means to be a psychic empath. This Inuit goddess of victimhood being transformed to the victor is this crescent moon second chakra, young, beautiful, naive, sweet, yet old soul, powerful energy. This energy that's not about running away, but running to her marriage with her chosen soulmate. We get to choose our connections. Yes, our mother is the foundational soulmate this lifetime, and that is because we're carrying a karma that we ourselves have been attached to. Now, we're not talking about discarding a soul. That's impossible. We're not talking about letting go of a bond in the parochial sense. We're talking about being able to swim back to the shore of soul source, whether or not the material world is going to require that. In order for us to do it, we must scale the depths of the ocean seas, have our hands and our legs cut off so we can't swim. That's what happened to her. Her father cut her hands off, but she was transformed into a sea animal with her fins, you know, not completely, but like a mermaid, you know? And that's what happens to us. That's Great Mother's message to us, is to allow ourselves to do our deep detox work. And like Byron Katie, the author of Loving What Is and the Work, says, the victim assigns the power to someone else to make themselves feel good instead of taking responsibility for how they feel about themselves. And so we have to take responsibility for the power that courses through our energetic field. And we have to determine where we are assigning this power. Because by refusing to determine how we feel about ourselves and persisting in this avoidant behavior and this loneliness, It's just sustaining aggressive behavior toward us and internal aggressive feelings that we deny or we project onto others with all kinds of justifications. And so this is this victim cycle that she's coming through, and she's saying that, although we may not be where we want to be in relation to the situation, remember how far we've come. We have earned this status, this state of psychic awareness. It is an evolutionary opportunity to connect with others in a new way, to regain the reins of our lives. But to fully harness this power, and this is from the guidebook, it says you must resist the temptation to be pitied instead of respected for the divine being you are. That's a great mother's response to our question this session: how do we manage psychic overload? I hope that's been helpful and hopeful for you. But above all, and most of all, remember, Great Mother loves you, and I do too.